It began with a flash of frustration that the cameras couldn't look away from. Brittney Griner stormed off the court, towel in hand, eyes locked straight ahead, jaw tight with emotion. She didn't shake hands, didn't look back, didn't say a word. But in a world built on viral moments, silence speaks louder than anything else. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Millions of views, endless debate, and a familiar, painful question echoing across social media. What happened to Brittney Griner? For over a decade, Griner had been more than a basketball player. She was an icon, a symbol of dominance, resilience, and courage. Her name once carried the entire weight of the WNBA on its shoulders. She was the face of the Phoenix Mercury, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, and the kind of player who changed how women's basketball was viewed. At 6'9", she towered over her opponents with a blend of power and grace that the sport had rarely seen. When she dunked, it wasn't just a play. It was a moment that shattered expectations. But now that same fire seemed different. It wasn't about dominance anymore. It was about survival, about holding on to relevance in a league that was suddenly shifting beneath her feet. Before Caitlin Clark ever hit a logo 3, Brittney Griner was the WNBA. Her highlights from Baylor weren't just impressive, they were revolutionary. She turned the women's game into a spectacle, a must-watch event. She led Baylor to a perfect 40-0 season, and when the Phoenix Mercury drafted her first overall, she became the league's foundation for a new era. Endorsements, media appearances, global recognition, Griner carried it all. She made headlines for her victories, her advocacy, and her strength. She was more than a star. She was a movement, but the world has a short memory. In 2022, everything changed. A trip overseas became a geopolitical nightmare. Brittney Griner, detained in Russia, became the center of an international crisis. For months, the world watched and waited as she faced a 9-year sentence in a penal colony. When she finally came home, she returned a different person, leaner, quieter, and visibly changed by the ordeal. The league embraced her as a hero. The crowd stood in ovation at every appearance, and for a brief moment, she was back where she belonged, on top. Yet as Brittney was rebuilding her life, a new story was being written thousands of miles away. A young woman in Iowa was lighting up college arenas, breaking viewership records, and making basketball look effortless. Caitlin Clark's rise was meteoric. Her three-pointers from near half court, her confidence, her charisma, it all drew fans who had never watched women's basketball before. Her name became a brand before she even stepped foot in the WNBA. And when the Indiana Fever drafted her first overall, everything changed again. The WNBA had never seen anything like it. Games that once drew a few thousand fans were suddenly selling out. Jersey sales broke records. Broadcast schedules shifted overnight. Networks that used to air a handful of games were now fighting for rights to show every moment Caitlin Clark played. For years, Brittney Griner had carried the league through advocacy and consistency. Now Caitlin Clark was redefining it with entertainment and mass appeal. The spotlight had shifted, and everyone could feel it. At first, Brittney tried to brush it off. Every generation has its star, every sport its next big thing. But it was impossible not to notice. The post-game cameras that once crowded around her were now flooding Clark's locker. The same networks that built their identity around Griner's highlights were looping Caitlin's assists on repeat. The endorsements that had once gone to veterans were being redirected to the 22-year-old rookie from Iowa. Nike, Wilson, and ESPN all reshaped their campaigns around her name. For Brittney, it wasn't jealousy, it was realization. The game she helped build had found a new queen, and that realization came with tension. When a mid-season reporter asked Griner about the Caitlin Clark effect, her answer was calm but laced with something deeper. "Respect in this league isn't given," she said. "It's earned." It was the kind of quote that would have gone unnoticed years ago. But in this new WNBA, it ignited a firestorm. Overnight, social media turned her words into battle lines. Some fans called her bitter, jealous, unable to accept the changing of the guard. Others defended her, saying she was simply demanding fairness, reminding people that fame and respect aren't the same thing. Soon, it wasn't just fans choosing sides, it was the entire league. Players, coaches, even analysts began tiptoeing around the growing narrative. Brittney represented the old guard, the pioneers who had carried women's basketball through years of struggle, media neglect, and financial instability. Caitlin embodied the future. Viral fame, sold-out arenas, a league suddenly mainstream. One was a survivor, the other a sensation. The clash wasn't personal, it was generational. Then came that night against the Indiana Fever, A close game, high emotions, a hard foul that went uncalled. Griner's frustration boiled over. She slammed her towel, muttered under her breath, and walked straight into the tunnel. Cameras caught everything. Within minutes, the clip spread online with captions accusing her of saying something she didn't. Speculation filled the void faster than facts could. It didn't matter that she denied it. Didn't matter that she clarified her words. The internet had already decided. In an era where perception shapes reality, Brittney was now the villain in a story she never meant to write. That's the cruelty of fame. It doesn't forget, but it doesn't forgive either. For Brittney, every move became a headline. Every facial expression became a debate. The narrative was no longer about her skill but her emotions, her attitude, her reactions. Meanwhile, Caitlyn stayed silent. Professional, poised, letting the media swirl without adding fuel. And that silence only widened the gap. Behind the scenes, the reality was harsher. Griner's return hadn't been easy. Her body was still recovering, and mentally, the weight of her time away hadn't vanished. Sources close to her said she often felt like the league was using her story when convenient, but forgetting her when the cameras turned elsewhere. The Mercury were rebuilding, relying more on youth. The chemistry wasn't what it once was. And for someone who had sacrificed everything for the game, that loss of connection stung more than any online comment ever could. While Brittney battled frustration, Caitlin Clark's empire kept expanding. Wilson released a signature ball line. Nike teased a shoe collaboration that crashed pre-order systems. Every week, she broke another viewership record. The same corporations that once celebrated Brittney's advocacy were now pouring millions into Clark's brand. It wasn't malicious, it was momentum. But in a league where attention equals opportunity, the imbalance was impossible to ignore. That's the heartbreak at the core of Brittney Griner's story. It's not about jealousy, it's about erasure. She isn't angry at Caitlin Clark. She's angry at how quickly the world moved on. For years, she was the headline, the fighter, the hero. But in the age of viral moments and short attention spans, even legends can feel disposable. Still, if history has proven anything, it's that Brittney Griner doesn't stay down. Those close to her say she's more focused than ever, training harder, staying quiet, and letting her game speak again. She's determined to remind the world that her story isn't over. Because while Caitlin Clark may have brought the WNBA into a new era of visibility, Brittney Griner built the foundation it stands on. And that's the truth fans often forget. These two women aren't enemies, they're chapters of the same story. One represents survival, the other represents expansion. One carried the league through silence. The other amplified it to the world. Together, they define the evolution of women's basketball. Maybe Brittney's viral moment wasn't a meltdown at all. Maybe it was a reminder, a spark from someone who refuses to be forgotten. And maybe Caitlin Clark's rise isn't a takeover, but a continuation of what Brittney started. Because for the WNBA to truly thrive, it needs both. The legends who built it, and the stars who will carry it forward. Drop a comment if you believe Brittney Griner still has another dominant chapter left in her story. Or type Clark era if you think the torch has officially been passed. Either way, one thing's certain. This isn't the end of Brittney Griner's legacy. It's the beginning of her fight to reclaim it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because the next season of the WNBA is shaping up to be its most dramatic yet.